Good evening once again, and you're all welcome to our first meetup session, the Design Thinking Ghana Hub Open House. And I first of all want to wish you all a Happy New Year. This is the first time we are meeting. It's a new year. Happy New Year to every one of us. And I believe that the year started well with us, and we are diving into it very deep. So once again, you're welcome to our first meetup, and I'll take the opportunity to introduce myself. I'm Matthew Wedo. Basically, I'm the communications and program coordinator for Design Thinking Ghana Hub. I usually put together these meetings and conferences. Been doing this for the past 1 or 2 years, and I'm glad to be on the call with you all once again. And as per our schedule, somewhere within the meeting, we'll have our facilitators introduce themselves and tell us what interests them about design thinking and what they are going to help us understand with respect to design thinking and other fields. But then we have some new people or some faces that are not familiar. So we'll first of all start by asking a few people to introduce themselves, if that wouldn't be a problem. So yeah, I'll start with Steven. If you can just unmute yourself and introduce yourself to us. Okay, if Steven is not available, hi. Oh, okay, just yes.
I don't want to have anything with my friend. Me, I don't do my friends that way.
Okay, that's not the Steven I was talking about. Okay, so yeah, can you just introduce yourself? Just briefly tell us your name. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
yeah, you go with what we are supposed to. Your name. Okay, good evening.
Your name and what you do. Yes. Okay.
Okay, so I'm Isaac Apa, and I'm with KNUST Horticulture Department, and then a passionate environmentalist. So that's what I can say as a brief intro.
That's good. It's interesting because we always have you on most of our calls, and we are glad you're always patronizing design.
Okay.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you too.
Yes. Okay. So now I'll move on to Ishira Samson. Ishira, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi. So my name is Ishira, and I'm a compliance officer with the FDA. I think that's it.
Yeah, we are glad to have you, Ishira. And we hope that this session will be very beneficial. Okay, to the next person. Steven, can you? Read the description of the event. It's more like a greet and meet where we get to engage in the concepts of a brief introduction to design thinking, and then we tell you what we mostly do at Design Thinking Ghana Hub, and then we'll tell you as well what we envision for the year, various topics, various aspects that our facilitators will be taking us throughout the year. And basically, it's just getting to know more about design thinking and what the plans that DTGH has for engaging design thinking and engaging the public. So without much ado, I would call on Kofi to set up the stage. Kofi, over to you.
Thank you, Matthew, and good evening, everyone. I'm very certain you all can hear me. If you can't hear me, perhaps you want to raise your hand, virtual hand, and so we know that you can't hear me. But if you can, let me just give it a check. If there are no hands, then I'm certain that you all can hear me well. And then I'll kick off. So check, 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 no hands. You all can hear me well. That's great. All right, so welcome again to Design Thinking Ghana Hub, our first meetup for 2023. And this is just an open forum, just to, get to meet you. Okay, this is just going to be an open forum, a safe space where you can ask all your questions about design thinking. I think some ground rules. If you're not talking, it will do us a lot of help if you mute your mic. That would help us a lot so we don't have any interruptions coming through. Awesome, good. Right, so we thought to, give you a safe space to ask us all the questions you've got about design thinking. For us, we take the opportunity as well to introduce you to what design thinking is, what we do at design thinking, who we are, because we understand that most of you, we understand from our facilitators and the team that a lot of people most of the time get curious about design thinking, and they ask us a lot, what is design thinking? And so we are attempting to answer that question today in terms of what we do at design thinking, who is the face behind design thinking, and show you some of our portfolio. So that is the purpose of this call. If that was what you saw on any of our posts, and that's why you join us, then I'm sure you are at the right place. Okay, so going into it today, I'll take the opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Kofi Jemfi. I work with Design Thinking Ghana Hub since 2016. And throughout that period, I've had a great time of my life engaging some of the creatives in this country, entrepreneurs, schools, businesses, startups. And it's been an interesting time with design thinking, teaching innovation, and workshopping and meeting some incredible people. So as you are here, I'm sure you might have seen the poster somewhere and you were just curious, to find out what is design thinking. And that is what it's really started for all of us, for me, and for most of us. It just started with some curiosity, right? Just to find out what design thinking is and who they are and what they do. And that's why you're on the call. And so it really always starts with a gathering of curious minds. And just to help you understand who we are, design thinking. Design thinking is a community. It's a community of individuals who take the design perspective to problem solving. And that's geared towards new business development, new product development, new policy development, and everything around innovation. And so that is what we are. We are, of course, we're a company, we registered, but more importantly, we would like to talk about ourselves as a community, as a group, as a gathering of individuals and professionals who are really passionate about taking the design perspective. And we're going to go into that very shortly to help you unpack what the design perspective is. All of us come from very different backgrounds, and so all of our facilitators and our program managers and everyone, we come from very different backgrounds. Some of us are engineers, some of us are researchers, some of us are education, some of us are CEOs, some of us are footballers, whatever you can think about, really, really diverse group of people. But what binds us together and what makes us tick is the design perspective. And that's what we're going to, briefly attempt to help you understand. At any point, if you think I'm speaking too fast or too slow, just put up your hand and I'm sure I'll be able to adjust and have you have a good listening and viewing experience. The design thinking was founded by Dr. Gordon Adomja, who is all of our father. He's our mentor. Started design thinking back in the days before 2016, and the whole concept was really to introduce the African business ecosystem to design thinking, because we realized that was the disconnect, that was what was missing. Having the human perspective to problem solving was what was missing. So the vision at the time, which still is the vision, is to introduce the African business ecosystem to the design perspective, which we found, that is missing for a long time. And so that's about what binds us, who we are, what we do, and what our background is. At any point, if you want to ask a question, I'm happy to have a dialogue so that I don't keep going and missing you. Okay, so you might be wondering what we believe in as design thinking. First, we believe everyone is creative. Everyone can be creative. the mind, we can teach you to be creative because everyone is creative, and you're just needing to know what to do and how to, use the neuroplasticity of your brain to get creative. We also believe that creativity sparks innovation. So innovation is really at the heart of all that we do. And we strongly believe that wicked problems are best solved wicked problems are best solved collaboratively. And so that's why you would appreciate that we all come from very, very different backgrounds. And the mix of the people and the quality and the diversity of our backgrounds really brings a very unique flavor to all of our projects and the perspectives that we bring onto all of our projects. What we do at Design Thinking, we do a lot of business consulting. We do a lot of product and service development. We also are big and heavy on ethnographic research, which is research that happens where the problem is, let me put it that way. So we go where the problem is and who is facing the problem, try as much as we can to get all of the data right from the problem owner, I would say. And then we don't usually go the typical problem-solving approach of going with surveys to probably understand the problem at hand. We have different tools that we use to unpack some of the problems. And so,
yes, I want to connect you.
Matthew, are you saying something?
Kofi, you're good.
Okay, great. Right. And then the other thing that we do at Design Thinking is training and policy development. And so we do a lot of trainings for corporate, we do a lot of trainings for government, a lot of trainings for schools, and really any entity that is needing a design perspective on any problem that they are needing to solve, we do that. So think of us as the hub that does business consulting, product and service development, ethnographic research, as well as training and education and policy development. We've had quite a good ride, and don't attempt to read everything on the slide. It's not meant to be read by you. It's too much. I don't want to strain your eyes on your screens. I'm going to help you understand. Over the years, we've had quite a good engagement with a variety of entities, and these are some of our very proud engagements that we've had. Just right on top of the COVID pandemic, we were engaged by GIZ to help design and implement and evaluate what they call the Lab of Tomorrow, which the Lab of Tomorrow is really, it's an incubator, it's a space where they bring together entrepreneurs to solve some of the world's most challenging problems. We also work with green incubation, and we also work with SNV to help with curriculum development and training and support for their green incubator. We also work a lot with GIZ again for some of their development requirement definition for citizen generation data apps. We've also worked a lot with, of course, GIZ, IBM. We've worked with MTN. We've worked with Cosmo Innovation Center. We've worked with Osfarm. We've worked with Unilever. We've worked with some SMEs in Ghana. We've worked with the Ghana Incubation Hub. And so these are some of our really notable institutions that we've worked with. We've worked with Stanbic Bank. And so if you would, you understand how broad our client base is from education to corporate to government to startups to small and medium scale, as well as to big global entities like GIZ, the United Nations, UNDCF, and all of that, such entities. These are the type of people that we work with. Then that takes us really to what design thinking is. But before I go in there, I just quickly want to share this with you in terms of some of our engagements that we've had over the years. Give me a second, let me switch screen. Okay, 1 second. Okay, my screen is up. So over the years, we pioneered the first design thinking conference on the African continent. and we had such a good turnout. In 2018, this is the hall. You can see the number of people there. Just to show you some visuals of how workshops and our conferences are. So we run an annual design thinking conference, which is, you know, the host and the biggest platform, really the first platform in Africa and the biggest platform in West Africa that is solely focused on design thinking dialogue. And during these workshops, we help people actually have a feel and an immersive experience of what the design thinking process is about, how to start, how to get into it, and while you are into it, how to take it to the next level. But just some of the images from all of our workshops and some of our conferences that we've had over the years. This is last year. We did have another conference. This is some of our monthly meetups, which we'll be talking to you a lot about in a few minutes. And this was one we had on tourism. We do have some of our training programs with Cosmo Energy and Cosmo Innovation Hub and Cosmos Innovation Hub. So just to give you a visual representation of some of the things that we've been up to at Design Thinking Ghana Hub. Now I'll just pause for a minute and then ask if anybody's got a question. I'll be happy to take it. If otherwise, I'll move on to the big question that we get asked a lot, and I'll attempt to get you into what design thinking is. Do we have any hands up? Okay, not yet. Good. All right, so let's just go into it. So for the uninitiated, if you're here, if you're new and you've never been to any of our meetups and you're just curious to find out what design thinking is, I would have you think of it as a problem-solving approach, right? So design thinking is a problem-solving approach. And we have a chart. Okay, not yet. Good. So design thinking really, it's a problem-solving approach. It's a process for creative problem-solving that usually it starts with people and their needs. And it often takes a systems perspective. So people, their needs, and it helps move a little bit outside of people and their needs to consider the environment in which the people and their needs are in. And that's what we call a system perspective. And anyone really can tap into the creative potential of design thinking and grow this in-demand skill for today's competitive market. So if you didn't hear anything I said about what design thinking is, I'll repeat that. It's a problem-solving approach, which is very user-centered and often takes a system perspective in understanding what the problem is. And someone saying anything? Okay, which often takes a system perspective in problem solving. Now think about it in two ways. I usually will talk about it in two ways. It's a process, right? So then it has where it starts and where it ends. And it's usually really, do not have a definitive end because you want to iterate, you want to test, you want to run the solution that you came up, that you arrived at, you want to run it through the mill and refine it. And so you can always go back to it. You can always go to any point in the process and refine your assumptions, refine your understanding of the problem, and then move on to the next stage. So design thinking is a problem-solving approach. I'll say that again. It's a process as well as it is a mindset. So most of what we believe in that I talked about before is about the mindsets that accompanies design thinking. And if you go onto Google you put in design thinking in Google, you're going to find some schematics that is close to this, right? So this is what the design thinking process looks like. We often visualize it as a step-by-step approach from this side of the screen, from empathy all the way to a solution that you test. But then as you can see, it can take on many different shapes and form, and you can really adapt it to the type of problem that you're solving. So usually we will start with empathy to really go into the depth of the problem to better understand it from the user's perspective. Only then do we have the license to define what we think the problem is. So have a good definition of the problem based upon our understanding at the research phase or at the empathy phase. Then based upon this understanding, we will attempt to create a vision of what the solution should look like. Based upon that, we're going to ideate and come up with, ideation is coming up with a lot of solutions that fits the definition that we came up with, our understanding of the problem. We usually will go further than that to test some of these ideas that came from the ideation phase to, bring them to life, bring them to a stage where we can interact with, see them engage and ask questions. And so we build physical or interactive modules of what we are thinking of as the vision of the solution, so we can get real-time data and then use that data to refine the solution. And so we test it a couple of times before we're able to arrive at a solution. And so that is really, in a nutshell, what the design thinking process is about. It's a process as well as a mindset that really gets you to creatively solve problems in a systems perspective that often leads to creative outcomes. So yes, I think I've spoken a lot. I'll take a break here and then we can have an open forum, just anything that you want us to recap. Do you have any questions now? Do you think you can attempt to explain what design thinking is to someone else who wasn't able to join this call? And yeah, oftentimes I think it's the first question that's the most difficult, right? So hopefully, let's see if someone is able to break the ice on anything that you'd want to better understand when we talk about design thinking. And about the hub, maybe you're curious to find out anything you're curious to find out about. How much do we charge for workshops? Is it free? Any questions you've got, we are happy to take that now.
Okay,
Steven,
so we have Steven. Okay, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I think first of all, my first question is: at what point do you say you are practicing design thinking? Because unlike project management, you can say your everyday life is a project management. But at what point do you acknowledge that the steps you go through as part of design thinking? Secondly, do you charge for design thinking facilitation, and what are the terms? I think I'll reserve the third one as to move forward into the presentation.
Great, thanks, Steven. The first question is, at what point do you say you are practicing or doing design thinking? Does any of the facilitators want to take this? At what point are you design thinking? Maybe I'll put Philip on the spot. Philip, you want to take it?
All right.
Brian, please go.
Okay. Oh no,
okay.
someone can go.
All right, Kofi. Yes. So for me, what I would say is, if you're practicing design thinking, it's just like a normal problem-solving approach that you use, but of course, it's more around the user. So if you're thinking around the user and looking at problems from more of a systems perspective, then you are practicing design thinking. But some people say they have been practicing and using these methods over and over again. So it's just like any normal problem-solving approach that you go through. But the only difference, as Kofi said, is you look at it from a systems perspective, and then you focus around the user. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Love it. Thanks, Philip.
So if you are focusing,
Philip, looks like I interrupted. I think you made a point, which is a really, really good one. So at the point where you're thinking about the user and taking a system perspective, that is about your invitation to design thinking. Thanks, Philip. Brian, you wanted to put in a word?
Yeah. I mean, I think Philip did a spot on job. I would just say, for me, I think intentionality is a lot of it. So if you want design thinking to be a part of your life, I think it's just about how you approach problems. So usually people are really clear cut. We're just seeing what's in front of them. But when you can start a problem from understanding who is facing it and who's at the center of that problem and how their environment contributes to it before you react, and not just reacting to solve it, but reacting to see what's possible, I feel like that's when you start getting closer to being a design thinking practitioner, like in your daily life, right? So like having that intentionality to always pause, to analyze, and then to test before you rush into solving something, so that you also don't just do what you think is right for the person, but you understand their perspective and what you suggest for them, or even suggest for yourself with your decision making. So that's all I wanted to add on a more like personal note for design thinking.
Great, thanks, Brian. Prof, you have a comment in the chat. Do you want to speak to that?
I can read that out. Ike came up with a comment first. He says that I guess just as the project management, our awareness of DT makes us incorporate it in all daily activities. And then Prof also says that I also add that you probably also need to take the steps methodically. I hope I get that right. Methodically, and not just doing it in your head. Yeah, so those are the perspectives they put to it.
Great, thanks. I think what I'll add as well, for me, what practicing design thinking is for me usually, it's not thinking I have a solution the moment I hear about a problem. So for me, it's usually saying that anytime I am encountered with a problem, it's always and almost the practice is to step back and properly understand what the problem is, which is where empathy comes in for me. And then I'm picking up on what Prof said. For me, it's always as though I know what to do next, because I know after I understand the problem, in the design thinking process, there is something else to do after you think you better understand the problem, right? So you go to analyze your understanding of the problem and then have a definition. Once I think I have a proper definition, I know the next step. Now, can I think about a couple solutions to it? Then after that, I'm like, okay, can I bring it a bit to life? And then next, can I, try and test some of these features? And finally, refine the solution into one that I would actually want to use. And so the moment I start thinking about one, let me step back and understand the problem. And two, I feel I have a process that takes me from point A to point B. Then I'm practicing design thinking. What really makes it exciting for me is personally and in practice, it helps me cut through chaos. And so anytime there is fog, anytime there is uncertainty in terms of what do I do next, the moment I bring in the design thinking perspective, I'm able to find myself to say, what part of the problem solving process am I at? Am I not beginning to better understand the problem? Do I even have a good understanding of the problem? Do I have enough solutions to iterate on? That's thinking is what I think is the start and the invitation to doing design thinking. Yeah, so you had another question on our workshops. Do we charge for them? So we do have a couple of meetings. Let me call it all out. So first of all, we have our annual design thinking conference, which it's most of the time free, but there has been times where we charged. And interestingly, the times where we charged, we had as much turn up for when they were free. So depending on what it is at the depending on a couple of factors, we're going to charge us, it's going to be free. Typically, during COVID season, we had to make it free, at the time. And so, and most of the of our annual events have been free. Our workshops, we do have monthly meetups, like the type you're having right now, which is always free and open to all. The other type of engagement we have is our trainings and our workshops, which is usually engaged. So it's private. So we have an entity that will engage our services, and then we tailor the solution that they are looking for. So those ones are usually charged, and the entities that engages us is does the payment, right? And as to how much the charges, it's varying. It really depends on the brief that we are working with in terms of what the client wants, how much resource we would need to deliver that, and how many days it's going to take to deliver that. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, please.
Great. All right, Matthew, over to you.
All right, thank you, Kofi. Well, I think Brian added something on the chat. I'll quickly read that and then we move on. Says that the tools are also a big part of it. Tools like journey maps and ideation techniques. Being able to apply this to situations make a big difference with problem perspectives and solution option, and just provide you with more value when designing or creating solutions corporately and personally. All right, thank you very much, Kofi, for the insights. And I believe that we, those that are new to design thinking, we probably have a perspective of what design thinking is, and you also get to know what we do at DTGH. So next, as I mentioned earlier, we would have our facilitators introducing themselves and then tell us the topical areas that they'll be handling in our meetups and probably what interests them about design thinking. So we'll just want to get started on with that. Just a second. Let me pull up my lists. Okay, so it's Auntie Paulina here. Yeah, Paulina, can you just start with us?
Hi, Matthew. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect.
Yeah, so just go ahead, introduce yourself, what you think about design thinking, and possibly what we should be expecting, the topic area we should be expecting you to handle this year.
All right, sure. Sure, thank you. And hi, everyone. Thanks for the opening. And I'm sure our guests or like our first timers are able to have a sense of what design thinking is about and how we are able to innovate around that. I work within the international development space, and I would say my work is at the intersection of entrepreneurship, innovation, and development. And this evening, I mean, looking at the sheet when we're crowdsourcing ideas for potential topics for the year, something really striking around designing for development seem interesting to me. Because if you're familiar within the development space, you see a lot of, or you'll be most likely familiar to traditional project management approaches, the hefty proposals, the Gantt chart, and all of those tools. And it's also very common that we do think big, usually start big, and there is, less, we talk about that a lot, that there's less emphasis on the user and a couple of things within the development space. There are also some scenario, or it's uncommon to see. No, let me say it is not uncommon, or it's common to have programs within development where we can take about 2 years to plan, maybe a few months to implement, 1 or 2, 3 months, and then about 6 months or so for monitoring evaluation. And we've had a lot of feedback on why some of these approaches are not working or are not giving us the right results, etc. So one of the things, and I think Kofi touched on, it's how do we, within the frame of design thinking, creativity and innovation is at the heartbeat. How do we innovate around the whole process? How do we make sure that the spotlight is on the user who has this problem, and how do we come to the understanding, or how do we see through the lens of the user when we are developing these large programs in the development context? So I thought it would be interesting to see how then can we apply some of these design thinking tools the ones that Brian just put in the chat. How can we use some of these approaches, tools, and methodologies to be more user-centered in our development work? How can we be more hands-on in the process, like Doc also indicated, not just thinking through or just, having it in your head, but how do we get it from your head through our hands, to make it look like something that the user can relate to, and finally get it on the ground and iterate around the process. So for me, standing from that, angle, it's interesting to see how we can bring this perspective closer to the development practitioners to make our, process more relatable and impact more, relevant. So that's the thinking behind the choice of my topic. I'll pause here to see if there are any questions, and also to add that when I was selecting this topic, it was quite interesting to me because we often look at design thinking from the business sense. Well, we also have some development partners like GIZ that we develop projects, but when you step into the development space, we may acknowledge that, but it's hard to practice, right? So the understanding is there, is great, but how do we really get our hands dirty with these design thinking approaches and to make it reflect the work we do? So these are some of the thinking behind my choice of the topic. I'll pause here and happy to take questions, comments, etc. And also open to our facilitators, to co-facilitate or co-design the session, etc. Thank you. Over to you,
Okay. Thank you very much, Paulina. I think so. We should be expecting much more on development in your area of design thinking. So yes, as the year goes by, one of our meetups will be focused on that. All right. So in case you have any question, you can just raise your hand at any point in time, and we would have your questions answered. The next person I would want to call to introduce himself and talk is Mr. Philip.
All right, thank you so much, Matthew. Welcome everybody to this big family. I always say design thinking Ghana Hub is a family, and we are glad to have you all here. My name is Theodore Philip Asari. What I do now, I'm currently the Executive Vice President of Theovision International, which is a Christian non-for-profit organization using technology and media to reach rural people across Ghana and Africa. I also teach at Ashesi University. I teach a freshman course called Foundations of Design and Entrepreneurship for freshmen. And yes, so that's just a little about me. What I love about design thinking, or some of the things that really interest me in design thinking, is how design thinking helps you embrace ambiguity. And for me, that's really interesting for me, and how design thinking can help you unlock your confusion or your fog, as Kofi put it. And for me, that is one key thing I love about design thinking. The topic I'll be talking about this year is design and storytelling. I'm sure all of us know that when we go through the whole design thinking process and we come up with a solution, you have to communicate your solution for people to really understand exactly what you're doing and to want to buy into your idea or your vision. And storytelling is very, very important. And it's going to be a session where we're going to look at how can you link people's passions to your vision or to your idea. How can you connect people's passions to your idea? And the best thing to do is to craft a powerful mission moment story that makes people want to be a part of your idea or makes people want to support. And this session will really be interesting for fundraisers or people who really want to, you know, sell their idea or talk about their idea? How do you go about crafting a powerful story using design thinking? And that's what we are going to do. We're going to look at setting rules and setting things that you should consider when you are crafting a story for people to really understand exactly what you are doing. Because the main thing is, if you're not able to communicate whatever you come up with or whatever solution you come up with, which is the end product, then people really won't understand exactly what you're doing. And one thing you should know is we think in stories. Everybody thinks in story. Before you make any decision, you might have told yourself a story before you make that decision. And all these things happen before we make major decisions. And if you really want people to make a decision about your product or your service or your idea, then you have to really understand how to craft stories that really touches the hearts of people to want to commit and to support your idea or your solution. So basically, that's what we'll be looking at this year, and that's what my session will be about. It's opened for collaborators to look at how we can craft that workshop for this year. I'm open for any questions. If you have any questions for me, you can go ahead and ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Childo. Yeah. So basically for your session, we should be expecting crafting stories to tell people what you're doing and then raise funds. I think it's interesting because we love to listen to stories. It is stories that move us, and it would be good to learn something like that. Okay, so moving on, do we have Natasha on the call? Okay, then Kelvin, if you're on the call, over to you.
All right, Matthew, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
All right, thank you very much. By way of introduction, my name is Kelvin Kwate. I work with IC Group as a client coverage analyst. That's what I do, essentially working with institutions and then helping them find financial solutions, and just in a summary. So this year, I tell you, it's going to be, it promises to be very exciting. If you are here and you are thinking of joining our meetups, you don't need to miss any of them. From my side, there are two topics that I'll be touching on with my co-facilitator, who's Brian. One is life by design, and life by design is simply answering the question that we are used to: what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm sure most of us have been asked that question before, and the confusion that comes with it. And over the course of our life, we know we have changed professions. When we were 5, we wanted to be a pilot. 6, you want to be a doctor. By the time you are 10, you want to be a banker. And then it continues like that. And eventually we are kind of setting a certain goal or a future in which we want to get to. But then we get into this space where we see a lot of confusion. But then how do we solve those problems? How do we assess? How do we define or design a life that we want to be able to achieve? Now, life by design simply says that you have to design your life. Everything around us is designed. The building, the chair, the laptop you are using, the phone you are using is designed. It means that someone put species together, broke it down, tested, made some adjustments, and was able to bring a certain outcome. So in our life by design section meetup, we'll essentially be using design thinking to help us define the course of our life or design our lives. Now, design thinking is not only for, or cannot only be used for institutions helping them produce a product or a service, but can also be applied to our life. Because at the end of the day, it's fulfillment and satisfaction that we want. So we'll be using design thinking in our life. And there's some key principles. Let me just touch on some of the outcomes that we would be able to reach at the end of that session. One, we'll learn the principles that you need to be able to design your life. We'll look at how to assess your life, and not just by your work, but we'll put life into 4 segments. We have health, work, life, and then play. And then we'll look at how you can be able to build a dashboard from this section, because if you want to be able to design your life, you need to know where you are at the moment. And by doing the assessment, you need to touch on the various parts or the various components that form your life, your work, your play, your love, and then health. So we'll look at that. We'll then look at how you can be more action-oriented instead of passive. So that's using prototyping to be able to test things that you want to do. So essentially, if you want to become, if you want to go into banking, instead of jumping into the whole career, or probably going to university, taking a full year course, you can find a way to find information even before getting into the whole scope. That's the whole work, which is getting into the whole banking, and then finding out that that is not something that you probably would be interested in. So finding a way to be able to prototype, generate a lot of information. So these are essentially principles that we would use in a normal design thinking structure, but then we are employing them into our life. So we'll be touching on that as well. And then we'll look at the framework for choosing the life that you want to live. And that's a 4-step process to be able to do that. Gather information, narrow it down, choose, and then let go. So these are the outcomes that you would get when you participate in the Life by Design course. And then the second program I'll be touching on is essentially is using the customer journey map. In most of the design thinking sessions that we've organized, we touch on many of the tools, but this session would be specifically targeted to focusing on the customer journey map. It's such a powerful tool that helps you to be able to formulate and also be able to understand what your customers think, feel, and how they even use your product. So if you're here and you're into product development, you are building a service, or you are here and you are part of a team that works on customer engagement or customer satisfaction, it's very key for you to be able to understand and be able to walk in the shoes of your customer and to use those words to explain it. So the customer journey map helps you to be able to do that, to be able to understand what a customer feels, what they think about your product or your service, right from when they even need the service, not when they even interact with you. So for instance, if you're looking at a hotel service, what would a customer go through to be able to achieve their goal, which is having a delightful stay at your hotel? It doesn't necessarily start from when the customer steps in the hotel. It starts from when they are even thinking of a vacation. What are they thinking? How did they even choose your service? Be able to ask those questions and be able to put yourself in your shoes of your customer. And in this session, will be very practical to the extent that by the end of the program, you should be able to learn how to design a customer journey map and be able to apply it at any product or service that you find yourself creating. So basically, those are the 2 programs that will be engaged in Life by Design, which helps you to be able to formulate a certain roadmap for your life and be able to answer questions of where you want to take your life, especially when there's a lot of uncertainty on what you want to do next. It gives you that blueprint. Then you have the customer journey map, which helps you to be able to formulate or be able to understand what a customer goes through, and then strategically find ideas to even make it much better. I will end here, and Brian probably will add some few words to what I've described, but essentially this will be very exciting and very practical. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Brian, just go ahead, since you're working with Kelvin together on this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Kelvin, you've been so extensive. I don't know what I can say. I can probably only deduct from it. But hi, everyone. I'm Brian Champon. So currently, I'm the co-founder and CEO at a company called Green Hopper. And what we are pretty much doing is developing tools around the auto tech space and improving mobility experiences when it comes to developing more sustainable mobility for vehicle users and owners in Africa. And then also I project manage and portfolio manage on for companies and apply a lot of DT to this whole experience. So that's a bit of me. For the topics we are touching on, I think Kelvin has been extremely elaborate. So there isn't much more to add. All I'll say is that it would be super exciting. We'll be pulling from really exciting content like from Bill Burnett and Dave Evans' book, so that you can also, beyond what we teach, have resources you can follow up on and studying further for yourself. And with tools like journey mapping, for a majority of the workshop I've done, we've used it for a lot of companies, and people always tend to find it very insightful. Most recently, we used it at an Andy conference in West Africa, and it was the most attended and the best reviewed session. And this was used for people in incubation programs, improving their processes and making sure that they had better representation of genders and everything. So journey mapping tool. So really share with all of you. And yeah, I think that'll be it for me. Back to you, Matt.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Yeah, I think it's interesting, of course, because
so sorry, I forgot one point. I was
okay, just
talking
go
to
ahead.
Kofi. Yeah, I was talking to Kofi earlier, right before the call, and we were speaking around something like designing for your life. And the whole concept of design thinking is to prototype, iterate, get better, and do again till you have a solution that works well. So we are also considering making what we are doing a part A when it comes to things like designing your life and journey mapping, and based on how the attendance and audience is for that, doing a part B where the people who attend that session can get a chance to reflect, tell us how they've implemented the tools, what were some of the outcomes, what were some of the lessons, and then work towards how those tools can be improved and further developing their scope and the materials they have available to improve their design thinking within their lives. So we're looking forward to seeing how the first session goes. And then from that, working on an incredible like follow-up part B that combines and improves on what you've learned. Yeah, that's
All right,
it.
thank you very much. Yeah, so that's it with Brian and then Kelvin. If Papa Eugene is free, he can just take it up. Papa Eugene.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
all right, thank you very much. Hello everyone, good evening. It's always a pleasure when we have the meetup, design thinking meetup. So whether virtually or physically, it's always introduction about me. So I work with an organization called Afrika. It's mainly a business accelerator and a business advisor. In a space of where much more time dedicated towards coaching and supporting businesses so they can find their own path of growth. But let me now focus on design thinking. I have really enjoyed coming into the design thinking space. It started initially as using it for trying to solve one or two particular problems at the workplace, and I recall specifically we used it to find solutions to how we could improve employee retention and also design employee packages. And we discovered really interesting insight when we used it at the workplace. But over time, I've had the opportunity through Design Thinking Ghana to work on different projects, whether within the financial space or products and other things. I think that the two things that have really caught my interest is how we can use design thinking in the policy making space and also in designing truly innovative products and services. So in a nutshell, that is it about me. In terms of topics that will be handling this year, I'm excited to say that I will be working with a number of people from Design Thinking Ghana. Some of them are on the call. The first topic we'll be touching on is leading change by design, application of design thinking methods in organizational change. And I'll be working on this particular one with Dr. Engman and Teresa Johnny.
That was supposed to start at 5:30. Then she
Hello?
dropped the link.
Hello. Yeah, so the first project we'll be working on is leading change by design, application of design thinking methods in organizational change. And here the key question we are asking is, very often we see organizations come up with, say, we are making a change in direction, we are bringing up new strategies and all of that. And what we want to find out is, how is the organization able to make this change while paying attention to the human needs of their employees, while paying attention to the needs of their employees? How do they incorporate the needs of their employees into that overall corporate strategy or change we want to implement? And it's going to be a very interesting topic that we will be applying the same basic design thinking process, but this time with a much more focus on the human needs of employees and stakeholders within the organization. And then there is another topic I will be working on with Emilia, which is service design thinking, delivering exceptional customer experiences, which is also a very interesting topic. Taking the concept of the journey map, we will be working with it to see how do we focus on delivering great customer experiences, whether it is whether it is purely business, even in church or whatever it is. We'll be using that concept of the journey map to really break down the design of services and customer experiences for businesses and all other applications. But we'll be specifically looking at the hospitality industry. Then there is another project we'll be working on, design thinking for the modern entertainer, designing exceptional events and conferences. That one will be led by Emilia, and I'll be working with her on that. And then there is another one, which is around the world in 80 minutes, design thinking success stories. I think this is the particular one which I'm really once again looking forward to. Professor Adumja will be leading that. And in this particular project, we'll be curating design thinking success stories from around the world. We'll be focusing on what was initially the problem, how did the guys or whoever worked on it, how did they approach the problem, what was the key success they achieved, and most importantly, what were the lessons and the insights that they picked. So this is going to be another interesting project we'll be working on. And I believe when Emilia speaks or Prof speaks, they will touch further on it. So if you are new here, if it's your first time on this meetup, I encourage you to make sure you create the space and time to always join the meetup session, so you can really get the feel of how design thinking is applied in our everyday life, business, and any other area of our life that you can think of. All right, so I'll pause here, and Matthew, back to you.
All right, thank you, Papa. You just to move on quickly, I'll call on Derry to also introduce himself and get on. Derry, over to you.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, my name is Emmanuel Deriwanye. I am the coordinator for the Ashesi Design Lab. And what I basically do is that I work with a team to create enabling platforms for students, faculty, and staff, and sometimes with external entities to work on innovation projects. I generally love building stuff, building solutions for everyday problems. So yeah, that's what I'm currently engaged in. And I'm also happy to be part of the Design Thinking Ghana Hub family. For this year, sometime in June, if we're able to meet here, we'll be basically celebrating what we all know to be improvisation. But the term that I've chosen for it is Jugad. I think Prof introduced it to me some time ago. And basically it means improvisation, which is something that is very, very prevalent in our part of the world, from maybe all the mechanic shops that we know to our homes to the streets, everywhere you pass. There's some kind of improvisation going on where we try to use limited resources to make our lives better. So the session will basically highlight a real life story of a project that happened somewhere in Suhum, where cocoa farmers, through a design thinking training, capacity building, took a step back, like Kofi was trying to explain, or Kofi explained to us that design thinking is really about taking a step back to figure out what actually is the problem. And then when you understand the problem well enough, you feel empowered to take the next step, because design thinking framework always presents what you should do next. So by the time you realize, even if you were the one experiencing the problem, you would have moved from being a victim to becoming your own problem solver. So we will be looking at a real life example of how cocoa farmers, through going through the design thinking framework, actually came to understand that they could solve some of the problems that they've been facing for years and actually optimize and improve their productivity in their farms. So the session will actually present and celebrate improvisation, and also introduce how we can use the design thinking framework to sort of put structure around something that we have been doing every day, and sort of make it a mainstream structured approach to doing things. So this is really, I think, will be very, very useful for anyone at all, but most especially because the focus is in agriculture, for government institutions, for schools, for individuals, for anybody who's trying to make the agriculture sector a better and more gainful sector of the economy. So yeah, that is something that Design Thinking Ghana Hub has in store for you sometime in June. We hope we will see you around the middle of the year. Until then, all the best and Happy New Year from here. And yes, I'll be doing this together with Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. I was just laughing because I knew you were definitely going to mention my name. All right, so I think I've exhausted the list I have on my program, but I have a few people here on the call that I would also want them to introduce themselves and probably share their perspectives on design thinking. And before Dr. Gordon sums it all up for us, Aula Kwe, I hope I get the name right. Kwe, right? Yes, just go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So my name is Awula Adekwe. Yeah, I just joined. I think I've joined the Design Thinking Hub for some time now as a facilitator. So this is like my first meeting with you guys. And I work as a researcher at an oil and gas firm, and I just joined the design thinking firm this last year, getting into this year. So as part of what Dr. Gordon said, I will be working as a facilitator with the Botswana under the, let me get the name right. Please hold up for me. So I will be working under the nation and community building, branding, that's rethinking identity narratives through design thinking. So the whole perspective here is we are going to look at particular communities and we are going to share through our engagement with them. We're going to share like particular stories that they may have to reshape particular perspective. Maybe, maybe in the Volta region, they see a particular group of people to be a bit, they see them in a particular way, but as they share their stories with us, we are looking at giving a different perspective of design thinking to people out there through the stories that they share with us. So interacting with different people, interacting based on their personal, community-wide stories, we would look at their stories to be a sort of rebranding of how we see communities in Ghana, maybe in Jamestown, maybe in Cape Coast, Elmina, based on their stories. And we are looking at going to various communities to engage with the people and use that platform to get through to people on that. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Aula. Okay, so just as our facilitators have indicated, it's interesting to know that we can apply design thinking to almost, in fact, everything, every area, agriculture, tourism, anything you think about, we can apply design thinking. And that's the essence of being a design thinker. At this point, I'll call on Dr. Gordon to, no, before that, it's time for questions and answers. If you have any questions, if you have any suggestion, this is the time that you can air your thoughts about what you've heard so far. So the floor is open. If you have questions, if you have something bothering you about design thinking, if there is something about design thinking Ghana Hub that hasn't been mentioned and you want to know more about it, this is the opportunity to ask your questions. It's looking like there's no question because I don't see any hand up. Okay, so Dr. Gordon, are you?
Yeah,
yes.
Can you hear me?
Over to you, Dr. Gordon. Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Wonderful. Well, good evening to everybody. If you're in this hemisphere, it's good to, it's interesting because I was listening to the different topics and the expansions on the topic, starting with, starting with Paulina, and it's heartwarming because clearly what it means is that we've come really far as a community, and people have, our facilitators have really taken entrenched positions, if you will, in specific areas where design thinking can be applied. And as Matt, you were saying, it really does show the breadth of application. It shows how diverse or how it can be applied diversely, if I will put it that way. The English is not coming, but it's quite heartwarming from that perspective. And I'm hoping that for each of the monthly meetups that are coming up, where we will be running these, doing sessions on these topics, that we will go a bit deeper. We will be working with relevant interest groups or organizations in that space, and really engaging with industry on those topics. So it looks like a very exciting year ahead of us, and I hope that we can build stronger connections into industry, but also strengthen our own understanding of design thinking, and really sort of hone our skills as we do these workshops. So I think it's very exciting, and I'm personally very encouraged to see the application areas that we're going to be focusing on in the coming year. Yeah, so it's good to have you guys. Happy New Year to you all, and I'll hand it back to Matt.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Gordon. Yes, it's interesting, and the year looks promising and exciting, and I'm hoping that we learn the various aspects of design thinking, especially as we apply to businesses, innovation, and even our personal lives. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining. I want to thank Kofi and all the facilitators for talking to us about their topics and what they'll be doing. And as the months go by, I'll be working with each and every one of us so we can plan the events and get our audiences so we can execute it as such. So at this point, once again, thank you all for joining. It was glad having you all on the call and getting to interact with you. So I'll see you next month when we have our first meetup to talk about design thinking in a particular field or in a particular area. Thank you all very much and have a good evening.